Good evening. I'd like to call to order the September 13th meeting of the Conestoga Valley School Board. Welcome everyone that is here. Notice that all are in attendance. If everyone could please join me with the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, board, you have our agenda in front of you. I need a motion to approve our agenda tonight.
So moved.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Dr. Z, comments from you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I want to say that our ultimate goal is to get and keep all of our students in school, period. We're going to have to work together within the Secretary's order and applicable state and federal guidelines to make that happen. Within the district, K through 12, we had 92% of our students compliant with wearing a mask on Tuesday. This doesn't mean that all liked wearing a mask, because nobody really does. But 9 out of 10 of our kids did wear one throughout the day. As you know, I sent out a letter to the community last Tuesday regarding the process for getting an exemption to the Secretary of Health's masking order. I'd like to take a moment to provide more detail regarding that letter. Whenever a parent or guardian claims a medical exemption that requires an accommodation be made, the state and federal governments mandate specific procedures we must follow. Keeping in mind that the medical exemptions can be based upon mental or physical health, any health or disability-based exemption for a student must be documented in a Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 accommodation plan or in an IEP, both of which are covered under Chapter 15 or Chapter 14 of the Pennsylvania School Code. Both of these plans require a certified licensed medical professional to document the student's condition in order to allow the exemption. These licensed medical professionals may include MDs, DOs, licensed psychologists, or certified counselors who have worked with the particular child. If a parent cannot or will not provide that documentation at their expense, per the Federal Office of Civil Rights, the school must provide the evaluation to substantiate the conditions and accommodations needed. Basically, per Section 504, we need the documentation in order to approve the exemption. Without the documentation, we cannot approve the exemption. It is important that parents work with their child's principal through the process. Students in the process of completing the application for exemption will be treated as though they are in need of the exemption until the final determination is complete. During the rest of this week, we will continue to accept parent exemption requests that are accompanied by medical documentation from a doctor, licensed psychologist, or certified counselor who has evaluated your child and who has provided the rationale for the exemption. From there, the 504 process will be initiated. We will also continue to accept parent requests or consents for a district-initiated 504 evaluation. For those parents who have not provided either documentation or consent for an evaluation, the building principals will continue to reach out requesting the parent or guardian to begin the 504 process. Unless told otherwise by the parent, they will do this by sending home 3 documents: a 504 consent for evaluation form, a 504 procedural safeguard notice, and a universal face covering order exemption form. Once the 504 consent for evaluation and universal face covering order exemption forms are returned, the child is considered exempt pending completion of the evaluation process. For those parents or guardians who choose not to start or complete the 504 plan process, their child will be considered non-exempt from the order. As such, effective Monday, September 20th, the child who does not wear a mask and who does not have an approved exemption will not be permitted in the building for in-person instruction, but instead will be enrolled in our Conestoga Valley Virtual Academy, CVVA, in accordance with free and public education requirements. You may have heard some rumors that other districts are not requiring doctor's notes for the exemption. That is a false and misleading statement. As of today, all districts in Lancaster County are requiring the documentation either upfront or as they go through the 504 plan IEP process. Another concern I've been hearing is that this whole thing is unlawful, that the governor doesn't have the power to set this order. As a referendum, the Commonwealth did vote to limit the governor's emergency powers, limiting orders to 21 days. However, this order did not come from the governor, but from the Secretary of Health, and therefore is not limited to the 21 days or the same constraints that the governor's emergency powers were subject to. As for whether the mask order of the Secretary of Health is lawful, there are as many opinions as there are Facebook posts. Experts from across the state from both sides of the issue have considerably different views. The fact is that the order is currently being challenged in the Commonwealth Court, who will not hear the case before September 16th. Once it is heard and ruled upon, I fear it is only the beginning of the judicial process, as I'm sure whichever side comes out on the losing end of the case, an appeal to the state Supreme Court is likely to follow. I'm saying this because I do not know how long this order will remain in effect. Until the Secretary's mask order is terminated by the courts or by the Secretary, we must comply with the order. 2 days ago, we honored those who lost their lives 20 years ago in the 9/11 terrorist attacks, one of which occurred right here in Pennsylvania. If you've ever gone to New York City, you must stop at the 9/11 memorial. It will leave an indelible impression. I remember September 11th, 2001 vividly, as I'm sure many of you did. I was in a building full of students at West York High School. But what I also remember is the pride in how we came together as a country, a state, and a community. I'm deeply troubled by today's fractured arguments that we are having over masking. Not so much with the disagreement in principle, but how we are disagreeing without civility, empathy, or respect. CV is a great community, one that looks out for each other, not one that is disrespectful to one another. We are a community that wants what's best for our students. I'm asking you to work with us as we all want the same end result, to see our kids in school. We may not all order the way it was rolled out, how it was implemented, when it was implemented, but we still must work within its boundaries. Help us to help you keep your child in school. If you come up to the microphone tonight, please remember to be respectful in stating your concern. For those in the audience, please allow the speaker to share their thoughts without interruption or comments from the crowd. Speaking in public is not easy. Please be considerate to others as you would want them to be considerate of you. That's all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Z. Any board comments tonight? All right, hearing none. As we are about to enter our first time in the meeting for public comments, I would like to echo Dr. Z's comments on how we conduct ourselves. As a board, we are here to listen. As we listen, our expectation is that you will say your thoughts without getting loud, without getting angry, and that you will keep your comments away from any type of personal attack toward anyone on this board or anyone in the administration. And like Dr. Z said, we ask for your respect of each other. And I would also like to say thank you to all of you who emailed us, regardless of which side you were on. Many may not have been responded to, but understand with non-board members they were seen and read. With that, I will open up public comments. Again, remember that we need your name, we need your address, and just as a note, you have probably 3 to 5 minutes. So, public, the floor is open.
Do you have somebody that's first?
Oh, sorry, yes, there is somebody that did. Is Patrick Gibson, are you? Yep, Patrick, you can go first.
There's a microphone right next to you, sir.
You need to go to the mic, sir.
There's one
Nope.
behind you.
You can go right behind you.
Behind you.
I sent a letter in to Dr. Z and the President and Vice President of the Board inquiring about this equity plan, and I think it's a third focus area. Anyway, it sounds like a major change. This district has always been a good district. I graduated here. a long time ago. I'm 75. Retired military. I don't like the third part of that, the equity plan, at least not in what I'm possibly reading into it. I think the taxpayers need to be sent whatever the board is drafting up concerning how you want to implement this, what's in it in its entirety. We get emails, a lot of people have computers, notebooks, etc. Everybody should know what is going to be proposed, and then you should vote on it, i.e. we should vote on it after we read it. It should not be decided by the board itself until the taxpayers read it, hopefully in its entirety. That's all I have to say.
Sure.
Mr. Gibson, the plan will be presented only tonight. Dr. Mann will present it. It then goes out for public review for 28 days. Hard copies will be at each of the buildings and per school code at the library. So in addition to Dr. Mann's presentation, we'll have the hard copy, the 108 pages for review.
Nope. So the floor is open. All right. Moving on in our agenda. Let's see here. I think. Oh, okay.
Come on down.
Sorry. Yeah. That's fine.
Yes, it's been a long time since I've spoken. My name is Kristen Bishop. I live at 1912 Creek Hill Road, and my son just started kindergarten at Fritz. I'm a registered nurse. I have a graduate degree in nursing and health law, and a lot of other specialty certifications I won't bore you with. Up until Friday, February of this year, I worked for the Pennsylvania Department of Health reviewing compliance with regulations for 9 years. So there are a lot of things I could talk about tonight, but the one thing I think we all have in common is the desire to provide safety for our children. I think that in a lot of ways, this order is safe, but there are several ways that I'd like to point out that, in my opinion, this order is unsafe. So the order requires that you provide reasonable accommodation, which you have a process in place for. However, my son came to the district after many years with IU-13. His medical conditions are well documented. His ability to wear a mask does not change whether the physician writes a letter or not. And in my case, my son's pediatrician absolutely refuses to write a mask exemption letter. That doesn't change his abilities. It doesn't change whether or not he's going to be able to comply. This order talks about the effectiveness of masks, but it does not provide any information regarding the safety of long-term mask wearing or face coverings in children. The definition provided for face covering states that it may be improvised from household items. Think about that. Prior to COVID, if I sent my 5-year-old to school with an improvised face covering, as a mandated reporter, you would question that. If you would question it before COVID, you need to question it now. If you read the disclaimers on the masks that are currently for sale, they are being advertised as fashion face coverings, not as medical devices that prevent transmission. The manufacturers recognize the liability associated with this mask issue. Fashion face coverings and improvised household items are not masks or medical devices. They can be made of any material, any toxic chemical, and they do not require safety testing. And this mask order does specifically advise that children wear face coverings and improvised household items, not medical masks. So the other part I would like to point out is that Section 5A of the order specifically prohibits the school from enforcing mask wearing when it is unsafe to do so. I'm curious to know if the school district has the resources to evaluate whether every child who wears a mask or face covering to school every day is safe. Do you have individuals trained in assessing and monitoring the effectiveness and safety of masks or face coverings or improvised household items? Are these individuals available to perform such monitoring on an ongoing basis based on each child's risk profile? The scenario I just described is not sustainable and does not belong with the school. I'd like to close with a few suggestions. Instead of requiring a physician letter to exempt my child from wearing a mask, I suggest you obtain a physician letter certifying that it is safe for a child to wear a mask or face covering or improvised household item all day within each building. I suspect that the physicians who are refusing to provide a mask exemption will also refuse to provide that certification letter. I suggest that every person in this Commonwealth who's being forced to wear a mask or face covering demand safety information from the entity providing or requiring the mask, whether it's the manufacturer, the school, the employer, or the Department of Health. Demand the safety evidence. I suggest that you review and revise your trauma-informed plan. In 2019, Section 1311B was added to the Pennsylvania School Code, requiring schools to incorporate a trauma-informed plan which is tailored to the community. As a community, we have now been dealing with pandemic mandates for almost 2 years, and there is evidence out there that our children are suffering. Have you assessed how mask wearing and Department of Health mandates have affected the children, parents, and teachers in this community? I suggest you leave the safety decisions for each child with the parent. 2 weeks to flatten the curve has now turned into 2 years. I am choosing to focus on the safety, and I encourage everybody here to do so as well. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is Phil Eby, and we live in Leola. We have 3 kids in the district. We have 1 here in the middle school and 2 at Fritz Elementary.
Real quick, will you do the address, please?
Yeah, can you have your address? Sorry.
135 Snapdragon Drive. So I'd first like to thank the board and the administration for starting the school year off, for having the courage to start it off without masks and leaving it up to the parents. And our kids had a very good start to the year, haven't worn masks, and haven't been harassed or bothered or anything. So I think that's a tribute to you as a board and administration, so thank you. Our kids are healthy, they're happy, they want to go to school, and we want to keep it that way. The order from the Secretary of Health on August 31st that we're all familiar with, Section 3B says if wearing a mask, if wearing a face covering would either cause a medical condition, and then it goes on to some other things. And this was quoted in the letter from the school on September 2nd. If wearing a face covering would cause a medical condition. It would, and it does. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that this is an acknowledgement that wearing a mask can create medical issues. There's a study in Germany. They looked at 25,000 school-age kids, and 68% of the parents reported negative effects of wearing masks. 53% of the kids experienced headaches. 50% experienced concentration difficulties. That's going to affect their performance in school. 42% experienced discomfort, and 38% experienced impairment in learning. How are schools addressing impairment in learning due to kids wearing a mask? The same study also showed some other changes in the kids, and this is from the parents' point of view. 60% said the child is often more irritable than usual. 49% said the child was less cheerful. And 44% reported the child no longer wants to go to school. We want our kids to go to school. And this is just a partial list of some of the issues with masks that they create. This study clearly shows there are a lot of negative effects. And these are all immediate effects. And there's no long-term studies on what happens long-term with these kids. So we as parents, we're the ones in the position to make decisions for what is best for our children, especially considering all these negative effects. If the school wanted to give a child Tylenol, we have to sign off for that. Tylenol's been around forever, and that's for a sick kid. Here we're putting masks on healthy kids. We respectfully request the board to change the policy to allow for parental choice regarding masks, to provide exemption without the school contacting a doctor or turning over medical records, to provide the exemption with only parental approval. Thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Julie Fisher, and I live at 145 Spring Meadow Lane in Ephrata. My husband Aaron and I have 2 children at Brownstown Elementary. Bo is 5 and he's in kindergarten, and our oldest Ethan is 11, and he's in the 6th grade. Tonight I want to speak on behalf of my son Ethan. Ethan is a bright, happy, social, funny, goofy 11-year-old. At times, his goofiness can get the best of him and get out of control in the classroom. The teachers have often had to speak to him about self-control, and that was something we were aware of and working with him on. However, Ethan never had an issue with his grades or his respect for authority until last spring when we received a call from one of his teachers. The teacher was very concerned about a gradual change she had noticed in Ethan's behavior, as well as in his grades. After giving examples, she asked me if there were any changes going on at home that Ethan could be struggling with. I paused to think, because there really was nothing. Everything was normal on our end. A few minutes later, I received an email from another teacher asking me the same question. This had me concerned. What could it be, I wondered? Is it a bully at school? I waited until bedtime that night to discuss with him what his teachers had told me. I'm fine, he kept saying, I'm fine. But I'm fine wasn't good enough for me. I kept prying, asking about friends, teachers, and bullies. What was it? And then as I watched as my son slumped over and started crying in loud sobs I had never heard before. What is it? I asked again. But he could barely speak. I waited for him to catch his breath, and when he was able to speak, I was shocked at what he told me. I can't breathe at school. I can't breathe in that dumb mask. Every time I pull it down to get some air, I get yelled at. If it falls below my nose, I get yelled at. I can't concentrate on what I'm doing at school. I can't take it anymore. I'm tired of this. It makes me feel sick, and I can't do this anymore. I sat in silence. I didn't know what to say. How could I have missed this for so long? I don't work outside of the home, so the only time I had to wear a mask was to go to the grocery store, and during that 1-hour grocery trip, I struggled to breathe. My husband was working from home, so he never had to wear one unless it was a necessity, and yet we were expecting our boy to wear this over his mouth and nose for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. For the next several months, we encouraged him every day that he could do it. We told him school was almost done. Summer would be here. We told him that there was a vaccine, so mandates would end. We told him we would vote in May to end Governor Wolf's masking orders. We told him it's what you must do for now. Summer finally came. We enjoyed 2 family vacations, no mass. We went to our large church, no mass. We went to the movie theater, restaurants, barnstormer games, stores, aquariums, no mask. Everywhere we went this summer, we went without a mask. Then summer was gone and a new school year was to begin. We had no concern for masks. After all, the U.S. has 3 vaccines, FDA approval, over half the population is vaccinated. And we now know that children who become infected with COVID have no symptoms, or they have milder symptoms such as low-grade fever, fatigue, and cough. And children are not as susceptible to the more critical symptoms as adults are. So we were all surprised when after a week of normal school, we were told by our governor that our children needed to mask up. When we broke the news to our son, he seemed okay. I told him we would try to get him an exemption. He acted like he was fine. But the night before the masking order was to start, I woke up to hear my son vomiting in the bathroom. I was worried he had the flu, but he said no. He was just anxious about having to wear a mask. I assured him that he could go without one for this week because we were seeking an exemption. For the entire week, we sent him to school without a mask. But at home, at night, he would become nervous and sick to his stomach at the very thought of having to wear one. These mandates are hurting our children. This story is just one, but I refuse to put my son through this anymore. I ask that you please give parents the choice to make the right decision for their children. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi there. My name is Jill Mabel. I live at 21 Mayfield Drive. First, let me start by saying again that I recognize the weight that has been placed on your shoulders with this mask mandate from the Secretary of Health. Thank you for considering my perspective as you continue to evaluate what our district needs to do. Although there are many routes to take tonight in terms of speaking, I'd like to go back to the basics from where our country was founded, to a proclamation that was made 245 years ago and still stands today. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words should unite every person in this room. It is the preamble to our Declaration of Independence, a declaration that has shaped our country's laws for decades. There's no expiration date, no asterisk on the end of that, and no annotations for reference. It is to be interpreted in its purest form. Let's look at the definitions of these basic human rights. First is life. Merriam-Webster describes this as the sequence of physical and mental experiences that make up the existence of an individual. What our children are dealing with right now asks them to excuse their basic human right to life as they compromise their physical and mental experience based on a proclamation made from our State Department of Health, none of whom know the unique experiences my child goes through on a daily basis. Second is liberty, the quality or state of being free, the power to do as one pleases, freedom from physical restraint, and the power of choice. We even cited it in our Pledge of Allegiance tonight. We are asking the board to acknowledge this power of choice, giving that authority back to the parents with exemptions that do not require doctor's notes. Last is the pursuit of happiness, a clause in the Declaration of Independence which sets forth the freedom of citizens to pursue work of one's choosing, the right to freedom against discrimination,
freedom of contract, and the ability to live one's life as they wish with minimal government intrusion. I think these statements embody why we are here tonight as parents on both sides of this issue. We are here because we want the authority in this decision for our children. I'm not asking for the government's permission, for your permission, quite honestly, in making the decision of whether or not my child wears a mask. I am, however, asking that you recognize the egregious overreach taking place in our state and find a way to correct the course, setting a policy for our district that recognizes what our preamble declared. Please honor the right that we have as parents in America to make these decisions. It's 2021. As a parent, I should not have to consider whether or not my child will face possible segregation or discrimination for simply wanting to pursue an education in the United States of America while practicing his certain unalienable rights. Thank you.
Yes, hi, I'm Rick Atkins. I live at 50 Grable Road in Leola. I have a daughter in high school. I have a son that just started middle school, and I'm an alumni. So, first of all, I really want to thank the board and the administration for the hard work that they're doing, especially over the summer coming up with the health and safety plan, which I thought was fantastic because it had measurables in it. If this number of people are sick, then we do this. Then, you know, my kids were excited. Going back to school, they don't have to wear the mask. Great. And then, a week and a half into it, they get told that they have to start wearing masks again because somebody not in our community decided that. That is not a measurable thing. It is a blanket statement, okay? You know, both kids were super excited starting the new year, seeing their friends again, and not having to wear the masks. Last year, I heard from both of my children about having a headache when they're coming home, finding it hard to concentrate. And then I also saw, because both of my children were eager to learn and have been since they were little. We spend all of our vacations, we're going to museums and other outdoor activities, exploring nature, and that's what they do. They're like little sponges, and they enjoy learning. And the staff, the teachers at CV are exemplary, and they're awesome, and they excite my children. Over the last year, second half of the year, my kids were not nearly as excited about going to school. And my daughter actually played the system and went to the nurse because she was so burned out that she went there and actually lied to the school nurse and said she had a headache and didn't feel good so that she would get sent home and given that 10-day break. That's not what my child is like on the normal. So that's just a personal experience of mine. What I'm asking of the school board and administration is to reject this mandate and adopt the plan that you guys developed and adopted to safeguard our children while they're in school, because it has metrics. If you can't measure it, it's never going to go away. That's my opinion, okay? But again, I truly appreciate everybody on the board for doing what they feel is right for our children. And I just hope that, you know, once we get through this and find out whether this whole thing is legal or not, according to the judiciary, I hope that we can get a good resolution that, I know not all of us are going to be happy. But if it comes down to that, then that's what I'll have to do, or make another decision. So, but thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Brittany Hershey. I live at 289 Raspberry Road in Leola. I have a first grade daughter at Leola Elementary who loves school very, very much. My husband is an alumni here. I guess kind of a food for thought, and one thing I've been going back and forth since this has started, is as we all know, as I know the first woman had mentioned, the doctors won't sign exemption notes. That's just, Penn Medicine has already made it clear it's not something that they're doing. Unless somebody has a trach or they are unable to physically pull their mask down. However, as we all know what the order states, it is very vague, and it's saying that if a child has, again, I don't have it in front of me, but talking about a medical diagnosis that can affect them wearing a mask. What I don't quite understand is I have access to my kid's medical records, and every single year my kid goes through a well visit. And on their well visit has a list of diagnoses. My kid specifically has an IEP and has speech. But with other kids, whether it's anxiety or autism or asthma or whatever it might be, we have access to well visit forms that the doctors electronically sign. So they are stating on those forms that this kid has this diagnosis. So what makes a difference between having an exemption form where they're writing the diagnosis and signing it, which they won't do, but me physically printing out that form that I get every single year and that I've submitted to the school, stating on that form and me saying, this is this diagnosis, here's the doctor's signature. Why is that not allowed to be done? So, just a food for thought.
Hello, my name is Samantha Hershey. I live at 152 South Eastland Drive. I'm here because I want to speak on behalf of my children who cannot speak, and let you all know how they are really feeling about this. I believe that as parents, we know their medical history, we know their emotional states, we know our children. And when they come home suffering from headaches and they're crying and they're miserable, and they don't want to come to school, I find that very unfair. The acting secretary says that students should be exempt from face masks or shields if it impedes on a mental condition or a disability in which both of my children deal with on a daily basis. I have also required, my kids to tell me how they feel on a daily basis. And I have told them that I am trying to get a doctor's note, and I have contacted their family doctor, and they are also patients at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And none of the doctors want to help me. They have refused to sign anything for me. They said that if my child has autism, then they would gladly sign it. But my children don't deal with autism. They deal with anxiety. My oldest son, he's in middle school here. He is in the life skills class, and he needs a lot of help. And this mask one day and mask the next day causes him stress, and it goes against his routine that he needs as a person that deals with intellectual learning disabilities. I do believe that their disabilities are legit. I don't know how else to say it. I believe that, everybody deals with issues differently, and I don't want to discredit they're, my oldest son has been through a lot. When he was born, he had seizures and was in a coma. And the doctors told me that he wasn't going to make it. But I prayed, and I prayed, and I never lost hope. And now he is 12 years old and in middle school. And my boy is a strong boy, but this is hurting him, and he can't speak up. Just last week, my younger son, who attends Smoketown, was outside. He was walking to his bus, and he said that he took his mask down to take a sip from his water bottle, and he was scolded, and he was embarrassed. He came home and cried to me. He said, "Mom, I can't do this mask anymore." He already deals with headaches because he has very strong prescription eyeglasses. And I don't know what to do for my kids, but I can tell you that as a mother, I will not allow them to struggle and be unhappy in a school where they come home and there's more stress on them than there should be. Because I believe school should be a welcoming and stress-free zone as much as possible, because kids deal with so much on a daily basis as it is with peer pressure. And I just feel like us as parents, we should be able to make our own decisions for our own children. It's no different than at the beginning of the school year when somebody sends home a paper that says, "Can your child take Tylenol or have Neosporin for a cut?" What is any different? We don't want them wearing a mask, that's our choice. We don't want them taking Tylenol, that's our choice. If I don't want my kid having a cough drop, that's my choice. I'm not here to bash anyone. I do believe that you all have done a very good job. I don't know what it would be like to be in charge of something like this. I do pray for our school. I pray for everybody in it. And I just pray that you would allow us parents to do what's right for our kids. Thank you.
Hi. Go ahead. Okay. No, go ahead. My name's Alyssa Martin, and I'm a resident of Brownstown. It's 85 West Main Street. We have 3 kids at Brownstown Elementary, and one still at home, younger than school age. But first, I just want to thank you all, board members and superintendent. These last 18 months have been intense and laborsome, and I just want you to know that I appreciate the work that you put in and for your dedication to hearing what the families in this district want and need. I also want to give a shout out to the amazing teachers at Brownstown and the principal. They are top-notch people and just really caring. We are thankful for them and for all that they do. I came tonight because I'm willing to get out of my comfort zone to be a voice for my children, to speak up for my kids who want to continue to enjoy school mask-free. Tonight, I'm requesting that you would revise the district's policy so that the parents can have the authority to choose whether their children should wear face coverings. The Department of Health order is not a law and allows room for interpretation. We are not in a state of emergency. Please don't let the Wolf administration take the power away that you have as a local school board. Your current approach Your current approach is that my child must have some medical issue or disability, learning or otherwise, to be mask-free and, requiring the signature of a doctor. But what about the potential that the mask could cause a medical condition or disability? There are absolutely negative effects to wearing a mask for a lengthy amount of time. Have you evaluated the full extent of the physical, the social, the emotional, and the psychological issues that stem from face coverings for children? Please check the recommendations from the World Health Organization, especially for children 11 and under. If we can promote that research shows that snacking and drinking during the PSSAs results in better test scores, isn't it only logical that uninhibited breathing could also promote a better learning experience? Also, I do not think that the statistics that we should be looking at are who wore a mask last week.
Last year, at all.